He staggered home with her child. The mother's decision left the world in silence. The plasma bolt seared past Kieran Cross's shoulder as he clutched the screaming infant against his chest, her tiny fists beating against his diplomatic jacket. Emergency klaxons shrieked through the corridors of Nexus Station, while explosions rocked the superstructure, sending debris cascading from the ceiling. The acrid tang of burned metal and ionized air filled his nostrils as he pressed his back against a bulkhead, feeling the infant's rapid heartbeat through her swaddling. "Shh, little one," he whispered, though his own pulse hammered against his throat. The peace talks had lasted barely 3 hours before the first shots were fired. Now the neutral diplomatic station resembled a war zone, with human and alien forces engaged in brutal corridor-to-corridor fighting. Kieran had been evacuating non-combatants when the explosion in Section C sent him running toward the screams instead of away from them. He found her in the wreckage of what had been the alien delegation's quarters. Princess Arya Vaelthanor lay pinned beneath a fallen beam, her silver-white fur matted with crimson, those distinctive fox-like ears pressed flat against her skull. Even dying, she maintained the ethereal beauty that had captivated him during weeks of negotiations. Elegant features that seemed almost human until you noticed the subtle points of her ears, the way her amber eyes caught light like cut gems. "The child," she gasped as he knelt beside her, her voice carrying that melodic quality all her people possessed. Blood flecked her lips. "Please." Kieran followed her gaze to where the infant lay crying in a protective alcove, somehow unharmed despite the devastation around them. The baby's features were a perfect blend, unmistakably carrying traits of both species, with Arya's luminous amber eyes but more human bone structure. "I can get you both out," he said, already calculating extraction routes. Arya's hand found his wrist with surprising strength. Her touch sent electricity up his arm, the same spark he'd felt during their private diplomatic sessions, when professional boundaries had blurred into something far more dangerous. "No time," she whispered. "Take her to my mother, the coordinates." She pressed something small and warm into his palm, a data chip, still radiating heat from her body. "I don't understand," he said, though part of him did. The child's mixed heritage was obvious now that he looked closely. The implications struck him like a physical blow. "You will." Arya's amber eyes locked onto his. "Promise me." The station shuddered under another barrage. Somewhere close, voices shouted orders in multiple languages. They had minutes at most before the search teams found them. "I promise," he said. Arya smiled then, an expression so beautiful it made his chest ache. She reached up with trembling fingers to touch his face, and he leaned into her palm despite everything, the chaos, the danger, the impossibility of their situation. "I dreamed of you," she whispered, "even before we met. The seers said a human would come who could bridge our worlds." "Kiss me," she breathed, "before I go." He shouldn't have. Protocol, duty, the fact that she was dying, none of it mattered as he bent down and pressed his lips to hers. She tasted like starlight and grief, and when she kissed him back, her lips were warm and desperate against his. The station alarms wailed around them, but for those precious seconds, nothing existed except the connection arcing between them. When they broke apart, her breathing had grown shallow. "Go," she whispered. Kieran scooped up the infant, who immediately quieted in his arms. As he stood preparing to leave, Arya's hand caught his again. "Her name," she said, voice barely audible now. "Luna. She is the bridge between our worlds." He nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in his throat. "And Kieran?" Her amber eyes were growing dim. "Be careful who you trust. There are those among both our peoples who would kill her rather than let her live." Before he could ask what she meant, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Heavy boots, human military. Kieran pressed himself against the wall as voices carried through the smoke. "Check every room. The diplomat's gone rogue. He's got something of theirs." General Blackwood's voice. Kieran's blood ran cold. If his own people were hunting him, the situation was far worse than he'd imagined. He looked back at Arya one last time, but her eyes had closed, her breathing stopped. The ethereal beauty that had defined her seemed to shimmer and shift in the emergency lighting, and for just a moment her features appeared more human than alien, as if death had stripped away some fundamental disguise. Luna stirred in his arms, and when she opened her eyes to look at him, they glowed with a soft, otherworldly light that definitely hadn't been there before. Kieran's hands trembled as the full weight of what he was carrying hit him. This wasn't just a child, she was something else entirely, something that powerful people were willing to kill for. The footsteps were getting closer. He tucked the data chip into his jacket and held Luna tighter against his chest. "Looks like it's just you and me, little one," he whispered. Then he stepped into the smoke-filled corridor and began to run. Kieran's shuttle bucked against the artificial gravity well as plasma bursts lit up the void around Nexus Station. Luna remained eerily calm in the makeshift carrier he'd fashioned from emergency supplies, her luminous amber eyes tracking the stars beyond the viewport with an intelligence that made his skin crawl. No infant should look at the universe like that. The data chip Arya had given him was warm against his palm as he fed the coordinates into the navigation system. The destination appeared on his screen. Velari Prime, deep in the outer spiral, a world that officially didn't exist on any human star charts. "Incoming transmission," the shuttle's AI announced. General Blackwood's scarred face filled the comm screen, his gray eyes hard as granite. "Stand down, Cross. Return to the station immediately." "Can't do that, General," Kieran replied, keeping his voice steady while his fingers danced across the controls. "I have a diplomatic immunity situation here." "That immunity was revoked the moment you aided enemy combatants." Blackwood leaned forward. "We know what you're carrying, Kieran. That thing isn't human." Luna made a soft cooing sound, and the shuttle's lights dimmed for a moment before returning to normal. Kieran felt goosebumps rise along his arms. "She's a child," he said. "She's an abomination. The alien princess was part of an illegal genetic experiment. That hybrid cannot be allowed to mature." Blackwood's expression softened slightly. "You're a good man, Cross. Don't throw your career away for alien spawn." The transmission cut as Kieran engaged the jump drive. Stars elongated into brilliant streaks, and Luna's eyes seemed to glow brighter in response to the hyperspace transition. Most human infants would be screaming by now. The dimensional stress affected everyone differently. Luna appeared to be enjoying it. While the autopilot handled navigation, Kieran activated Arya's personal logs stored on the data chip. Her image materialized in miniature above the projector. Beautiful, alive, speaking directly to him across the void between life and death. "If you're watching this, I'm gone," holographic Arya said, her voice carrying that same melodic quality that had made his heart race during their private negotiating sessions. "And you're probably confused about what Luna represents." The projection flickered, then stabilized. Arya was wearing the same silver gown she'd worn to their last dinner together 3 weeks ago, when the peace talks had still seemed possible. "Our species have been trying to find common ground for decades," she continued, "but we discovered something remarkable during the genetic compatibility studies. Humans and my people share more than surface similarities. We share quantum resonance patterns in our neural pathways. Luna is living proof that we're meant to be connected." Kieran remembered that dinner, how the conversation had shifted from trade agreements to philosophy, then to personal histories. How Arya had laughed at his stories about growing up on Europa's colonies, how her eyes had sparkled when she described the singing forests of her homeworld, how they'd walk the observation deck afterward, standing close enough that he could smell the subtle floral scent of her hair. How he'd almost kissed her that night before duty and protocol pulled him back. "I know you felt it too," holographic Arya said, as if reading his thoughts. "The connection between us. It wasn't just attraction, Kieran. Our species are quantum entangled on a genetic level. When Luna reaches maturity, she'll be able to access both neural networks, human and Velari. She could bridge our consciousness itself." The shuttle's proximity alarms chimed. 3 ships had dropped out of hyperspace behind them. Sleek, predatory vessels with the curved lines characteristic of Velari design. But these ships weren't flying rescue colors. Kieran's hands flew over the controls as energy lances split the darkness around them. These had to be the hunters Arya had warned him about. her own people, willing to kill Luna rather than risk genetic contamination. Luna began to cry for the first time since he'd found her, but her wails had an odd harmonic quality that seemed to resonate through the shuttle's hull. The navigation system flickered, then displayed a new course, one that led directly into an asteroid field that should have been impossible to navigate. "Trust her," Arya's recording whispered, though that phrase hadn't been in the original message. Kieran cut the engines and let Luna's crying guide them through the maze of spinning rock. Somehow, impossibly, they threaded between asteroids that should have crushed them, following a path that existed only in the child's mind. The pursuing ships fell back, unable to match their impossible trajectory. When they finally emerged into clear space, Luna had stopped crying. She looked up at Kieran with those two knowing eyes, and for a moment, he could have sworn he heard Arya's voice whispering in his mind, "Thank you." He touched the child's tiny hand, and warmth spread up his arm, the same electric connection he'd felt with her mother. "Just you and me, Luna," he said softly. "Let's go home." The shuttle jumped to hyperspace, carrying them toward a world where ancient empresses made decisions that could reshape the galaxy, and where a human diplomat would either become humanity's greatest ambassador or its most wanted traitor. Behind them, the asteroid field continued its eternal dance, hiding secrets that both species had died to protect. The mining station orbiting Kepler 442b looked like a rust-colored tumor against the star's amber light. Kieran guided his damaged shuttle into the docking bay, Luna sleeping peacefully in his arms despite the rough landing. 2 days of running from both human and Velari hunters had pushed his ship beyond its limits. He needed repairs, supplies, and answers about the child who seemed to grow more extraordinary with each passing hour. Luna's telepathic episodes had been increasing in frequency and intensity. During their last hyperspace jump, she'd somehow synced with the ship's navigation computer, plotting courses that shouldn't have been mathematically possible. When she slept, Kieran caught glimpses of alien landscapes in his dreams, silver forests under purple skies, cities that sang in the wind. Arya's memories. Somehow Luna was sharing them. "You look like Hellcross," Director Nova Kane said as she met them at the airlock. The station administrator was a tough woman in her 50s, scarred from years of deep space mining operations. "Half the galaxy's looking for you." "I know," Kieran said, adjusting Luna's carrier. "Can you help us?" Nova's expression softened as she looked at the infant. "Sweet stars, is that—" "Her daughter." Kieran met Nova's eyes. "She asked me to protect her." Nova led them through the station's utilitarian corridors to her private quarters. The mining facility was a haven for those who asked few questions: smugglers, refugees, and anyone else who needed to disappear for a while. "The bounty on your head is impressive," Nova said, pouring herself a drink. "Both sides want you badly." "Both sides?" "Human Colonial Command has labeled you a traitor. The Velari have issued something called a blood hunt. Means they'll kill anyone who helps you." Nova took a long sip. "So naturally, I'm curious why you'd risk everything for an alien child." Before Kieran could answer, Luna began to fuss. As he lifted her from the carrier, her tiny hand brushed his forehead. The world exploded into sensation. He was Arya, standing in a sterile laboratory as scientists explained the genetic compatibility protocols. The child they were creating would be more than hybrid. She would be the first of a new species, one capable of accessing both humanity's innovation and Velari collective consciousness. He was Arya, arguing with her mother, the Empress, who feared what this union might mean for their people's purity. "She represents evolution, Mother, not contamination." He was Arya, meeting Kieran for the first time in the diplomatic suite, feeling the instant recognition that made her heart race. The quantum resonance between their minds was like coming home. He was Arya, making love to Kieran in the garden dome of Nexus Station, their bodies moving together as their consciousness briefly merged. She'd never told him about Luna then, couldn't risk his rejection or the political implications. He was Arya, dying in the rubble, using the last of her strength to ensure Luna would find her way to someone who could love them both. Kieran gasped as the vision ended, Luna's innocent eyes staring up at him. Nova was watching them both with fascination. "Holy hell," Nova whispered, "she's telepathic." "More than that," Kieran said, his voice hoarse. The memories were still vivid. He could feel Arya's love for him, her fear for Luna's future, her desperate hope that he would understand. "She's a bridge between species. Arya and I, we were bonded, quantum entangled on a genetic level." "And the child carries both signatures," Nova said, understanding immediately. "That's why everyone wants her dead." Luna reached up to touch Kieran's face, and he felt another flash of memory. This one his own, but seen through Luna's perception. She'd been aware during her conception, her growing consciousness shaped by both parents' love for each other. She knew him, had always known him. The peace talks were a cover, he realized aloud. The real purpose was to see if the genetic bonding had worked, if Luna could survive and thrive. "And now she's the most dangerous being in the galaxy," Nova said grimly, "a living weapon that could force unity between species that have spent centuries maintaining separation." The station's alarms suddenly blared. Nova rushed to her control panel, her face paling as she read the displays. 4 ships just dropped out of hyperspace, human destroyer escort and 3 Velari hunters. They found us. Kieran stood, cradling Luna against his chest. "Can we run?" "Not with your shuttle. The hyperdrive is fried." Nova's fingers flew over the controls. "But there's another way. Mining Shaft 7 leads to an abandoned processing station in the asteroid belt. If you can reach it, there's a ship." The station shuddered under weapons fire. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. "They're not taking prisoners," Nova said. "Both sides would rather see this place destroyed than let you escape." Luna began to glow softly, her amber eyes reflecting the emergency lighting. The station's power grid fluctuated in response to her presence. "She's trying to help," Kieran said, amazed. "Then let her." Nova grabbed emergency packs and thrust them at Kieran. "Go, I'll buy you time." "Nova, that child is the future, Cross. Don't let them steal it." As explosions rocked the station around them, Kieran ran toward the mining shafts, Luna's light guiding them through the darkness. Behind them, Nova Kane made her stand, knowing she was buying hope with her life. In his arms, Luna reached out toward the stars beyond the station's hull, her consciousness already stretching toward her grandmother's world, where an ancient Empress waited to make the choice that would determine whether 2 species would evolve together or destroy each other in the attempt. The Velari homeworld hung before them like a silver pearl threaded with emerald continents. Kieran's stolen mining ship shuddered as patrol vessels surrounded them, their sleek hulls reflecting the system's binary suns. In his arms, Luna had grown noticeably larger during the 3-day journey, her consciousness accelerating her physical development in ways that should have been impossible. "Identify yourself human," came the transmission spoken in accented standard. "You trespass in sacred space." "I am Kieran Cross, diplomatic envoy. I carry Luna Vaelthanor, daughter of Princess Arya. I request audience with the Empress." Silence stretched across the comm channel. Then, follow the guide ships, deviate, and you die. The escort led them through layers of orbital defenses that could have vaporized entire fleets. As they descended through the atmosphere, Kieran glimpsed the legendary singing forests, crystalline trees that chimed in harmonious frequencies, their music audible even through the ship's hull. Luna pressed her small hands against the viewport, her amber eyes wide with recognition. She was remembering her mother's childhood among these very trees. They landed at the base of an impossibly tall spire that seemed to grow directly from the planet's core. Velari guards waited, tall, elegant beings with fox-like features and predatory grace. Their leader stepped forward, her silver fur marked with ritual scars. "I am Commander Thessa Vaelthanor, sister to the lost princess," she said, her melodic voice carrying undertones of grief and rage. "You will come with me, human. The child stays." "No," Kieran held Luna tighter. "We stay together." Thessa's hand moved to her energy blade. "You have no authority here, alien. Surrender the abomination and your death will be swift." Luna began to cry, but her wails carried the same harmonic frequency as the singing forests. The crystalline structures around the landing pad resonated in response, their chimes growing louder until the very air seemed to sing. The Velthari guards stepped back in shock. Their sacred forests were responding to Luna's voice. "Take them both," Tessa whispered, her scarred features pale with wonder. "The Empress must see this." They ascended through the spire in a lift that moved like liquid light. Luna had stopped crying, but the building's crystalline walls continued to sing softly, as if welcoming her home. Kieran felt the child's consciousness expanding, touching the collective network that connected all Velthari minds. She was downloading centuries of memories, learning her heritage at an inhuman pace. The throne room opened before them like the inside of a geode, walls of living crystal that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. At its center, on a throne carved from a single massive gemstone, sat Empress Astradana Vaelthanor. She was ancient beyond human comprehension, her silver fur threaded with gold, her amber eyes holding the wisdom and weariness of countless generations. When she looked at Luna, those eyes filled with something that might have been tears. "My granddaughter," she whispered, "what have they done to you?" "They made her into something beautiful," Kieran said, stepping forward despite the weapons trained on him. "Your daughter loved her. Loved me. This child represents everything Arya died believing in." The Empress rose from her throne, moving with liquid grace despite her age. "You speak of love, human, but love is weakness. It led my daughter to contaminate our bloodline with alien DNA." Luna reached out toward her grandmother, babbling in a language that was part human speech, part Velthari harmonics. The throne room's crystals responded, displaying holographic images, memories pulled from Luna's expanding consciousness. They saw Arya and Kieran's first meeting, their growing attraction during the negotiations, their night together in the station's garden dome. But more than that, they saw the quantum resonance between their minds, the perfect synchronization of neural patterns that proved their species were meant to unite. "The seers were right," the Empress breathed. "The prophecy spoke of a bridge between worlds, born of love and sacrifice." "Then accept her," Kieran said. "Accept what she represents." The Empress circled them slowly, her ancient eyes studying Luna's hybrid features. "And if I do? If I acknowledge this child as legitimate heir to the throne? The traditionalists will rise in revolt. Our enemies will see it as weakness." "Or they'll see it as evolution," Kieran countered. "Your daughter believed our species could be stronger together. Luna is living proof." Suddenly, alarms echoed through the spire. Commander Thessa's voice crackled over the comm. "My Empress, human warships have entered the system. They demand surrender of the fugitive and the hybrid." General Blackwood's face appeared on the chamber's main display, his expression harder than ever. "Your Majesty," he said, his tone coldly formal, "the human known as Kieran Cross is a traitor to his species. The creature he carries is an illegal genetic experiment that poses a threat to both our peoples. Surrender them both, and Earth will consider formal peace negotiations." The Empress looked from the display to Luna, who was reaching out toward the holographic projection with curious fingers. "And if I refuse?" the Empress asked. "Then we will take them by force," Blackwood replied. "We've brought enough firepower to crack your world's crust." The threat hung in the crystal air like poison. Kieran felt the weight of two civilizations balanced on the edge of war, with a hybrid child as the fulcrum. Luna made a soft sound and pressed her hand against Kieran's chest. Through their bond, he felt her consciousness reaching out, not just to the Velthari network, but somehow to the human ships orbiting overhead. She was trying to bridge the gap between both species simultaneously. But the effort was killing her. He could feel her life force burning like a candle flame in a hurricane. "She's trying to connect them all," he whispered to the Empress, "but she's too young. The strain will destroy her." The Empress looked at her granddaughter, really looked at her, and saw past the hybrid features to the innocent child beneath. Saw Arya's eyes, Kieran's stubborn courage, and something entirely new that belonged only to Luna herself. In that moment, the ancient ruler of the Velthari faced a choice that would echo across the galaxy: protect the old ways and let the future die, or embrace change and risk everything her people had built. The crystal walls sang with anticipation as Luna's life force flickered like a dying star. Luna's breathing became labored as her tiny body struggled to contain the expanding consciousness within. The crystal walls of the throne room pulsed erratically, reflecting her weakening life force. Kieran held her closer, feeling her slipping away like sand through his fingers. "Please," he whispered to the Empress, "don't let Arya's sacrifice be meaningless." Empress Astradana stood frozen between throne and destiny, her ancient eyes fixed on her dying granddaughter. Around them, the collective consciousness of her people whispered through the crystal network, voices of fear, tradition, and stubborn isolation. "My Empress," General Blackwood's voice cut through the chamber's singing walls. "You have 60 seconds to comply before we begin orbital bombardment." The threat hung in the air like a blade. Luna's glow was fading, her small hands growing cold in Kieran's grasp. Through their bond, he felt her consciousness fragmenting as she tried to hold both species' neural patterns in her developing mind. Then the Empress moved. She stepped forward and placed one elegant hand on Luna's forehead. The child's eyes fluttered open, meeting her grandmother's ancient gaze. "Show me," the Empress whispered in Velari. "Show me what your mother saw." Luna's remaining strength flowed outward, connecting all three minds in a cascade of shared memory and emotion. Kieran gasped as the Empress's consciousness touched his, vast, ancient, carrying the weight of millennia. But beneath the accumulated wisdom, he felt something achingly familiar. Love, the same fierce maternal love that had driven Arya to sacrifice everything for her child. Through Luna's fading awareness, the Empress experienced Kieran's memories of Arya. Their first meeting, the growing attraction that transcended species, their night together when consciousness itself had merged. She felt the quantum resonance between their minds, the perfect synchronization that proved their species were meant to unite. More than that, she saw what Luna could become, not an abomination, but a bridge between worlds, a living symbol of evolution rather than contamination. "Forgive me, granddaughter," the Empress whispered, tears streaming down her furred cheeks. "Forgive an old fool who forgot that love is the greatest strength of all." She stood and faced General Blackwood's image, her voice carrying absolute authority. "I am Astradana Vaelthanor, Empress of the Singing Worlds, guardian of the Crystal Network," she declared, "and I name this child my heir and the future of both our species." Blackwood's face darkened. "Your Majesty, I strongly advise." "You threaten to crack my world's crust?" The Empress smiled, and it was terrible to behold. "Try it, human. You will find that when our crystals sing in anger, they sing quite loudly indeed." The palace trembled as the planet's crystal networks activated in unison. Deep beneath the surface, geological formations that had slept for eons began to resonate. The Velari had not built cities on their world. They had grown them from the living rock itself, and every crystal formation was connected to every other in a web of power that spanned continents. Above them, the human fleet's sensors went haywire as harmonic frequencies interfered with their targeting systems. The very planet was singing a song of defiance. "More than that," the Empress continued, her hand still resting on Luna's brow, "I invoke the right of consciousness. Let every mind in both fleets witness what this child represents." Luna's eyes blazed with sudden light as her grandmother's vast telepathic abilities merged with her own. The hybrid child's consciousness exploded outward, touching every human and Velari mind within light years. They all saw it, the perfect moment when two species touched each other's souls and found not difference but completion. They felt Arya and Kieran's love, pure and undeniable. They experienced Luna's potential, her ability to bridge not just neural networks but hearts and minds across the galaxy. On the human flagship, General Blackwood staggered as alien emotions flooded through him. He felt the loss when Arya died, the desperate love that drove Kieran to protect her child, the infinite possibilities that Luna represented. And in that moment of perfect clarity, the hardened military commander broke. "Stand down," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the comm. Then louder, "All ships, stand down, return to Earth." "Sir?" his communications officer asked in confusion. Blackwood looked directly at Kieran through the display, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "I felt her, Cross. I felt what you felt. God forgive me, I understand now." The connection faded, leaving Luna peaceful in Kieran's arms. Her breathing had steadied. her life force no longer burning itself out. The Empress's support had given her the strength to survive her first bridging of species consciousness. "It is done," the Empress said softly. "The galaxy has heard her song." In the days that followed, the palace filled with beings from across known space. Scientists, philosophers, diplomats, all coming to witness the child who had shattered centuries of barriers with a single moment of shared consciousness. Kieran found himself appointed as Luna's guardian and humanity's first ambassador to the Velari court. The irony wasn't lost on him. The man branded a traitor had become the architect of peace between species. But the greatest moment came in the evening, when he sat in the singing gardens holding Luna as she slept. The crystalline trees chimed softly around them, their music a lullaby that seemed to echo from both Earth and Velari Prime simultaneously. "She would be proud," Commander Thessa said, approaching through the silver foliage. The scarred warrior had become an unexpected ally, her initial hostility transformed into fierce protectiveness for her hybrid niece. "I hope so," Kieran replied, stroking Luna's dark hair. Already she looked less like an infant and more like a toddler, her accelerated development guided now by love rather than desperation. "The Empress has asked me to give you this," Tessa said, handing him a small crystal pendant. "It contains the last recording Arya made before the peace talks began." With trembling fingers, Kieran activated the device. Arya's image appeared, radiant with joy and hope. "My love," she said, her voice warm with affection. "If you're seeing this, then our daughter has found her way home. I want you to know that everything, the pain, the sacrifice, the impossible choices, it was all worth it to give her a chance at the future we dreamed of." She paused, and Kieran could see Luna sleeping peacefully in her arms in the recording. "Raise her with love, Kieran. Teach her that strength comes from unity, that difference is beautiful, and that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply choosing to trust. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders. Show them all to her." Arya leaned closer to the recorder, as if she could reach across death itself to touch his face one more time. "And know that wherever I am, I'm watching over both of you, my heart, my bridge between worlds." The recording faded, but Kieran felt Arya's presence lingering in the crystalline air around them. Luna stirred in his arms, her amber eyes opening to look at him with perfect trust. "Yes, little one," he whispered, "we're home." Above them, the twin moons of Velari Prime rose over singing forests, while human ships shared orbital space with their former enemies. In the distance, construction had already begun on the first joint research station, a place where two species could learn to grow together. Luna reached up to touch the stars, her small hand glowing with the soft light that connected all living minds. In that gentle radiance, the future sang with infinite possibility.